Hello, so in this video I'm going to share with you some of the lessons learned that I've encountered over the past few years, both as a faculty member in cybersecurity trying to provide meaningful club advice, as well as kind of observing how a cybersecurity club can start interacting at a competition and some of the differences and things that you kind of wanted to try to foster and some of the things you might want to try to avoid. I've got a quick little list here. The number one, by far, I think most important thing that anyone acting as a mentor to one of these club efforts or competition efforts can do is really to empower the students as best as you can. And as you try to achieve this goal of empowering the students, I think that there's a couple little nuances that you kind of need to be aware of as you try to achieve that. First is to realize that what you might do in a classroom, especially if you're new to being an advisor, what you do in a classroom really needs to change as you go into a club mentality to effectively empower students in this domain. And the main reason why, I think, is because as you start exploring club-like activities and competition-like activities, there are many times to which you are simply not going to be the expert as to what's going on. And I think that that's a big dynamic difference that changes as you go from being a professor in the classroom and having your material to which you've had time to plan out, and you've planned out all your evaluation techniques and your labs, and you're very, very comfortable running that set of materials to competition stuff where maybe you've never seen some of the things that are going to be thrown at you. And as a faculty or as an advisor or as a leader, that's something that's going to happen, and you need to embrace that. You can't avoid that. You can't shy away, and you certainly can't be afraid of researching and going after new technologies and new techniques and new content. And this is something that, to me, starts in the club, in the advisement, in the mentorship process. You need to foster this mentality that no one individual is necessarily the expert at everything, including the mentor themselves. And what this does is this spreads a very positive mentality and atmosphere of each person becomes empowered to figure out their own answers, figure out their own questions. They can step forward as a leader and try to say, well, no one is really giving me the answer to this problem. I want to figure this out. Maybe I'm going to work with a couple of my friends and research it and give it a try and break some virtual machines and download some guides and go wandering for videos and really try to learn something along the way to which my organization, my club, we didn't have this knowledge before. We didn't have this capability before, and now I feel like I'm bringing something to the team. So that's I think, one of the most important things to effectively empower students in a club, especially as you're preparing for a competition. It creates a lot of very important team interactions that you're going to need in the future, or on competition day when the stress is really on. You're going to have these little pockets of people to, hey, we remember when we figured out this problem previously? This is something similar, but it's got a little bit of a twist to it. Let's see if we can work together and figure out this problem. You're going to want to create a lot of experiences like that over the course of a semester or over the course of a year as you kind of work towards competition day. So that's really, really important. One thing that I personally do, just to kind of give an example, would be is my body language. I completely change my body language from when I'm in a classroom as opposed to when I'm advising in the club. I'm a pretty tall guy, and I kind of have an authoritative, loud voice in the classroom, and so whenever I'm advising in the club, I immediately shift that to I'm sitting down, I'm speaking in a much calmer voice, and I try to change my body language to not being the overwhelming, demanding, leading authority in the room. And what that really allows for is students to try to step forward and kind of take the reins for a lot of different efforts. I also think this is really important because there's going to be 5 of them, 10 of them, maybe 20 of them, maybe 40 of them if you have a larger club, and there's only one of you. And maybe you have a counterpart that you can work with to start. But simply put, the amount of work that my guess is, if you're anything like me, you got a lot going on, and taking on some of the additional advisement and preparation activities for trying to get other people prepared, that's just, it would be like teaching an entirely another class or two other classes with the amount of work that you could put into managing maybe 20 to 40 students. So you're going to want to, as best you can, be a guide and a leader, but not necessarily the person who is responsible for doing, managing, and maintaining all the work. And a slight change in body language can really send that message to the students to say, look, I'm here, clearly I'm going to help, and I'm going to try to answer questions and push us in a good direction, but some of you guys are going to need to step up. Some of you guys are going to need to take responsibility for each other, for the newer members. Some of us are going to need to specialize and try to find something that I'm interested in, find something I'm passionate about, and share it with others, and not wait for the person who's supposed to be leading the ship, leading the team, waiting for the instructor to step forward and do everything and assign the homework and then tell us how well we did and tell us what we failed at. Like, no, we don't want that as our atmosphere. So changing the body language and accepting that I am not going to be the expert at everything, I think is really, really important for a guide or for a mentor to really have from the start. A lot of this also corresponds to, if you get a few passionate people, very, very quickly you will find you are not going to be the expert, because you're going to have a bunch of kids up drinking energy drinks and Mountain Dew all night, and they're going to spend like 4 different weekends researching this one really cool thing to them, and they're going to come in and tell you about it, and you're going to go, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, that's awesome, that's cool. How can we find that, make that useful for others? But it will happen eventually, where students are really going to dive down into topics. And so embracing that that's going to happen, instead of trying to say, no, I know everything about everything, is really, really important to making the atmosphere good all the way from the top down. This also will promote among other students to say, hey, if he's not the expert in everything, I know I'm not the expert in everything, but that's okay. I can still be in the room. And we found that for new students, new people to the club, many of them get intimidated very, very, very quickly when they realize in one of these competition type environments, they're exposed to how much they don't know. And for many of them, that's very overwhelming. Even especially the more advanced students, if a lot of them don't have, let's say, the personal or social skills to really get a lot of their points across, again, it becomes very apparent to the newer member that this guy, he's a nerd and he knows lots of stuff, and man, there's no way I can do what he does. I'm not comfortable anymore, and they end up saying, well, the competition's not for me. And so trying to create a dynamic environment where you end up having experts and you're having people passionate without making it openly competitive all the time. You do want to have an atmosphere where we do want to have a welcoming learning environment, let's say. So that is a kind of a fine line to walk, and that's where I end up spending more of my time, is not trying to teach any material or trying to push things on. I spend a lot of my time trying to get the right people in the club talking to the right members. So then if I see something where, yeah, your personality and your social skills are not going to line up with the person that you're sitting next to, I'll say, hey, come over here and take a look at something I want to show you. And that is a very, very important and a very, very powerful tool in a club environment. Because what that kind of shows is, I can be a leader for a couple students, maybe 3, 4, 5 students, and then the more senior people in the room will pick up on that. And they'll say, okay, the faculty, you're over there showing a couple students how to do this. I'd like to do the same thing, but over here on some completely different topic that I'm really nerdy about, and I know this and I love this. And so that's when you really start to have effective time, is the small little pockets of a couple people working together and trying to create those maybe every week or every time you meet. Little experiences like that is what is going to stick with someone. Little experiences like that is what's really going to set the fire in someone else to say, okay, this was a fun experience, this was overwhelming, but it was positive. It was something that I feel like I should come back again to try to wrap my head around the ideas, or I feel like I should go home or take this weekend and not play this video game, and I'm going to do some research on this because this sounded interesting and I kind of want to figure it out. A lot of this too, a lot of the work that is going to kind of be what you don't want falling entirely on your shoulders, in addition to these leaders that you might want to step forward, will be simply recruitment efforts. So how are you having your students recruit other students is also really, really important. A lot of the testimonials that I might say, look, competitions are great, being part of the club is great, you get involved with different jobs and different employers, and we have career fairs, and it's great for the resume, and by the time I'm done going through the laundry list of things that I have that I know are awesome reasons why the students should get involved, the students are like, yeah, okay, I don't really care anymore. It's like, yeah, that stuff sounds good, but this is too much of a poster now. And so trying to find a couple students and making sure that they have the right words, taking a lot of those key things that you just talked about and say, let's make sure that the student is equipped to explain those things to other students. And when you start getting the student-to-student testimonials where they can put into words the different highlighted reasons as to why they should be involved, that's when you can start getting a lot of additional recruitment to your effort. That's when you'll get people, new students coming into your program to say, hey, yeah, I think I'm going to take my extra time. I might take a couple of my weekends or a couple of my evenings and dedicate it to being involved in this effort. We're a two-year community college, so we have a pretty high turnover rate in terms of students. You know, students are usually here for only about 2 years. And so that becomes really, really important for us to be able to constantly get those first-year students coming in and say, look, within your first year, we really want you to get involved, so then by your second year, you can have half a clue what's going on, step forward, be a leader, and start teaching the next batch of incoming. So those that are at the four-year institutions, your timeline is a little bit bigger, so you have a little bit more time to work with the students. I am a little bit jealous of that, but it still is going to be an issue. You're still going to have people transferring out. You're still going to have people that, for whatever reason, they just, life reasons, they might not come back next semester, and vice versa. You're going to have people transferring in, new students coming in, and finding ways to recruit them is just not something you want to put all on your shoulders. You want to make sure that the club students, those involved in these efforts, as best they can help with the recruitment efforts. One of the next things that we want to really stress, or I want to really stress here as trying to have the right atmosphere, is you're going to spend a lot of time, if you had a really good semester, where students build stuff. They build a computer, they learned about some technology, maybe they wrote some code, maybe they configured something, maybe they set up a server, whatever it might be. A lot of them will, they're not going to know how to do this on their own, so they're going to go out and they're going to find guides, they're going to find videos, they're going to find resources. We had a couple students one year that took a couple of the club resources that they had, a couple bucks, and they bought a bunch of books and a bunch of ebooks. And so what I really want to stress here is you need to find a way from the start to accrue your resources, accrue the knowledge and experiences and lessons learned from one semester to the next. I certainly found when I started with this, you would go through an entire semester of learning and fun, and we had a really good time, and then next semester we come back and we'd be back to the start. And we'd be redoing and relearning and restarting and restating and having a lot of the same club meetings and a lot of the same preparatory meetings that we had last semester, mostly with the same people. A lot of just, they'd forgotten. Or they'd be like, yeah, I did this before, but I didn't write it down, I didn't save it. I didn't document it, I don't have that virtual machine anymore, I don't have that configuration anymore, things are lost. And so that's one of the best things that you can do from the start, is to make sure you have a way to accrue the knowledge and maintain that stuff. And you want to stress to all of the different members that this is not entirely your job either. Again, just like recruitment and just like teaching, you don't want to have all this weight on your shoulders. You need to spread it out, and part of this empower the student process, figure out that, or really enforce to them, instill in them that it's up to them to share the resources that they are finding. So one of the ways that we did this was we have on our network here, we have a share drive, so students can put files on a share drive. We also have an entirely separate Blackboard shell, so they've got their own forum, they've got their own organization. I'm the one who simply manages the member list, and all of them can post at any time to say, hey, these were some resources I came across with this. This was a tutorial that we did for this. One day the students went on the whiteboard and they made a big long list of steps of a how-to for one of the activities that they were doing. And when they were done, they simply took a picture on their phone and posted the picture then onto the Blackboard site. So then they had that knowledge. It doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be typed up, double spaces. I mean, students are not going to do that for something like this. But we need to find a way to actually save the knowledge and save the resources, save the links, whatever it is that they might be working on. And that's something that you need to kind of come to terms and accept. What is the student actually going to do? Now, I found out that that was one of the most effective things was, hey, just whenever you're done, either save the link or take a picture on your phone and just send the picture, okay? Upload the picture, and then that's good enough. So then at least we've got some reference, some point. And a lot of the stuff, it's not stuff that I'm going to be looking at again. It's stuff that other students are going to be looking at again. And so don't look at it and say, well, you know, I don't like how informal this is. Like, no, because the other students, they're not going to mind. They're going to look back and they're going to appreciate some of the scratch notes that they might have written to each other, and things like that are going to be really effective. So saving resources, accruing the resources, accruing the knowledge, when you find good examples, actually as best you can download them and keep your local repository, because you know websites are going to change, links might change, and it's really fostering, again, that environment of making sure that the students who are members are encouraged almost to the point of requiring a contribution to say, look, if you're going to be part of this club, you're going to be part of this organization, you're going to be doing things in here, the things you're doing are valuable, and I want you to contribute, I want you to save, I want you to share the things that you are doing this semester. The other thing that this really enables and empowers will be the students that can't actually make the times that you might meet. We happen to meet usually in the afternoon, maybe early evening, sometime between 2 to 4 or 4 to 6, something like that. And it's usually on a Thursday or a Friday. The students will pick a semester that's kind of best for them. And inevitably, there's a handful of students who can't make it to the times. And certainly when we first started out, when we had no way to accrue the resources, the students who couldn't make it to the times, it was just really, sorry, you really can't be part of the club. I mean, you're more than welcome to be. We can put you on the list. We can put you on an email list so then you know when stuff is happening. But they had no real way to participate. They had no real way to figure out what's going on. And so once you can set up a way for students to start sharing resources, now it becomes less important that they make the specific times that everyone else, maybe the other 80% of the club, might be meeting. So that's something that's really, really important as well. It really expands your ability to reach more students as soon as you can start saving what people do each particular week. And of course, it helps with a little bit of, hey, I kind of missed last week, something was going on, I was studying for a test or I was traveling. Then they can still go back and kind of see what did they miss, what happened this past week. One of the last things I want to stress will be creating goals. As your primary job, I believe, should be to find ways to empower the students. Students certainly are going to be young, they're going to be immature, and they're not necessarily going to know, okay, what should we be trying to accomplish this semester? Given who we have that actually can show up, given the things that we're interested in, what can we do from the start of the semester all the way to the end of the semester? And I think that that's something that, as a mentor, as a faculty, that really should be kind of our responsibility. Not to set the goals for them, but to help them set a goal. Set the goal to say, okay, this is what we want to accomplish by the end of the semester. Okay, now how are we going to do that? Okay, I'm not saying how you should. I want them to actually talk it out and say, okay, if we're going to get to this goal, then that means by the halfway point we should be here, or by next week we should be here. Or I can start looking and saying, what type of funds is it going to take, what type of resources are going to take, is this realistic, do we have a way that we're willing to do to be able to achieve this? Give an example, in the past we had some students that want to do some traveling, and one of the requirements then was that they were going to have to do some fundraising. If they wanted to do the traveling, they would have to do some fundraising, and a lot of the students are simply going, I'm not going to do fundraising, that's just not going to happen. And so they kind of realized immediately from the start, they had this goal, this idea in their head, but they knew, knowing the people who were there, they weren't going to have the means to achieve that goal. And so what they were able to do was to kind of openly say, look, this is not going to happen. Let's stop talking about it. Let's stop figuring out different ways we might be able to make it work. And now we can focus on a new goal. I didn't really care one way or the other whether they're going to go traveling or not. That didn't really matter to me. The point was I wanted them to focus on goals that they were actually willing to go out and achieve. That's something that will happen inevitably. You're going to have a lot of people who are going to create this nice sounding goal. That's fine. But if they have no means, no way, absolutely no plan to achieve the goal, now it ends up becoming a distraction. It ends up becoming this discussion point that it's like, yeah, but how are you actually going to get there? You're never going to get there. So then maybe we should focus on something that's achievable. So finding things that are achievable and then challenging them to figure out solutions to that. Helping them to maybe set those goals is something you can do from the start. But we want to be very careful. Do not constrict or restrain their ability to do the work, let's say. This is all part of that kind of empowerment process, and what I really stress is what it takes to kind of be a good mentor and be a good faculty. Kind of having said all these things, inevitably you're going to have a couple students as they step forward. Maybe they have good intentions, but they don't have good execution. And there's lots of times when I'm not going to be calling out a student in the middle of the club, in the middle of the meeting, in the middle of the competition. That's not a productive time to do things like that, to tell them. And I spend a lot of my time trying to talk to the right students, trying to talk to the key students at the right time to get the message across of what should they be doing, what could they do a little bit better, or maybe intervene in the case of if I see something negative happening, then I really need to stress to that student, look, you're causing damage. I realize what you're trying to do, but it's my job to call you out on the things that are going to stop progress, on the things that are going to turn off the new students, on the things that are going to say, look, you're really encouraging lots of good, interesting stuff. However, you're going to lose all the knowledge from this semester to the next semester, and we need to kind of change what we're doing so then we can actually have a productive year, not just a productive 15 weeks. So those are the types of things that I would really want to stress as you're going through and creating goals, as you're going through and identifying some of the key students to whom can help you out, and those that you really want to kind of take the reins on certain efforts. Be kind of aware about guiding them and avoiding some of that constrict and restrain, but also challenging them in the process to really figure out the directions that they want to go in. A lot of this is really a ground up, kind of base up effort. It is not the way a lot of the classroom runs, where they show up every day and it's up to you to say, okay, this is what we're going to do and this is what we're not going to do. And if you want to take extra time, then okay. No, it's the complete opposite of that. It's what are the things you are willing to do? Okay, now what are the things we can actually do? What are the things we have the resources to do? What are the things we're going to have to work on in addition? And then finally we might get to, okay, this is something that I would like to do, or this is something that an individual over here wants to do, and let's see how we can execute on that. So I'm interested to have any of your comments or feedback. If you have anything else that you'd like to share, feel free to shoot me an email at jrice, J-R-I-C-E, @mvcc.edu. And hopefully we can continue this discussion further as we go forward with regional hacking events.